Welcome back to Royals Weekly. I am your host, Marcus Mead, and joining me as always, the number one pick in your fantasy D-Gen draft, my brother Mike.
Oh yeah, 5-tool D-Gen player right here.
5-tool D-Gen.
He's got 5-tool D-Gen player.
This guy's got 5 different betting apps on his phone right now.
How do you know I'm a D-Gen? I was 2 minutes late to one of my own podcasts, and I'm drinking Diet Coke.
And I got a lovely Diet Coke with me while it's happening. Yes, a professional moment he turns into a chance to drink Diet Coke and be late. It's wonderful. Thank you so much to everybody who's joined us so far. We're very excited for this draft tonight. Very excited to see who the Royals add to their organization. It's going to be a real free-flowing. Some people might jump on and join us as we do this. I think Josh Keiser said he'll join us. Might have a couple others join us as the night goes. But we're really here to just break down picks, talk about prospects they might draft, they might not draft, and all that sort of stuff. We have a lot to talk about, and so we need to get to it. But first, we need to tell you that Bet Online is your number one source for all your sports betting needs this season, from baseball, golf, soccer, right to all the top fights at UFC and MMA and boxing. Every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads while the games are played. When the games are over, head on over to their online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker and unwind with one of their 150 slot games. Head over to the website today to get in on the action. Use promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for your 50% off free bet credit on your first deposit up to $250. Bet online, the game starts here. Mike, we got to talk about this trade that was just made because it's such big news. It's impacting the draft. It's going to impact the team when they get back from the All-Star break. Hunter Harvey traded for. The Royals have sent Caden Wallace and their 39th overall pick in tonight's draft to Washington for Hunter Harvey. Astute listeners may remember we mentioned Hunter Harvey as a trade target for them in the bullpen. He's had 45 innings pitched so far this season, 4.20 ERA, 3.16 FIP, 26.3% strikeout rate, and a 6.3% walk rate. Mike, what are your thoughts on the Royals getting Hunter Harvey, losing Wallace in their 39th pick?
You know, I think people have been talking a lot about how they overpaid, and I think that's something you're going to have to do if you want to kind of jump the market usually. Okay, the Royals have not been that team willing to do that in the past. I like that they were aggressive enough to go out and get a guy who brings exactly what you needed to the bullpen, the ability to strike people out. That's 50 strikeouts in 45 innings for Hunter Harvey this year. His ERA is a little bit up this year. There may be some issues with some of his secondary pitches, but he is still he automatically becomes the best pitcher in your bullpen. He, in my mind, automatically comes in to close games and kind of reshuffles how you're doing those kind of things for the second half. But I love it. I love it. And you know what's weird? I put this out on Threads. Immediately it did like several things. One, inflated your head because you were the guy saying they should go get Hunter Harvey, right? Made your head a little bit bigger because like it needed to be.
And I'm getting recognized.
And then, but the other thing it did, it made the bullpen better, but then it also just killed the Substack post that I wrote the day before.
I know
about Caden Wallace as a prospect for the Royals. And when I wrote that, what I wrote about was Caden Wallace is a guy who's put up decent numbers throughout his minor league stint, which hasn't been that long. I mean, he's had basically one full season of minor league baseball, and he was very good in that season, but he always seems to be lacking just a little bit of everything. He's good at everything, but he's not great at anything. And so you're a third base prospect that's an above average glove, but there's questions on whether you're going to hit the ball hard enough consistently. People like your raw power, but we haven't seen that turned into in-game power as much for a couple different reasons. You're not as consistent with it, and there's questions about whether you can consistently have the right launch angle to produce power at the major league level. So I was completely fine with the move. People were like, he's your number 2 prospect. Well, guess what? That's because your system isn't that good. And if you go look at national stuff, that's what they're saying. They're saying your system isn't that good, so your number 2 prospect isn't really a number 2 prospect. And so the thing that gets me is the money that we give up kind of for the draft pool. That hurts a little bit, but I like the move. If you're going to try and make a playoff push, I think it starts here.
Yeah, it's one of those things that's like, I mean, we talked about this not that long ago. I don't know if it was on a midweek episode or a weekly episode, but Wallace was the most I would want to give up. Wallace and this pick, like some people are like, oh, you overpaid. I don't know that they did when you consider like what it would take in this market to get a reliever like Hunter Harvey. It's going to take a lot in this market to get a controllable reliever who has back end stuff and potential and that sort of thing. And so it's going to take a lot to get a guy like that. And people are freaking out. Mostly what I hear from most people is not that they're upset with giving away Caden Wallace. I think a lot of people are sort of in the same boat as us, which is like, there's a decent chance he ends up a quad A player, that sort of thing. But they're really mad about the 39th overall pick. And I'm like, guys, listen to this. Okay. The average amount of WAR produced by a 39th pick is about 1.5 to 2.5 WAR over their entire careers. Like, that's a bunch of them who don't make it to Major League Baseball. And then the ones who do, they average about 1.5 to 2.5 WAR over the course of their career. Right. And so what you're giving up there is a real long shot at an everyday Major League player. Okay. Yeah, it's not nothing, right? You look at the guys who Lance Lynn went around there, some other guys, Sean Manaea, very famously, the Royals picked Sean Manaea right around there. But you know who else went right around there? Daniel Lynch. And so, like, it's
Foster
it's a
Griffin.
give and take, right? Foster Griffin went right around there. Like, it's that sort of thing. And so we don't have to fret over, this isn't like the NFL. Like, giving away a second round pick even in the NFL is a lot. Like, that's a lot of stuff.
Big deal.
For the Royals, it's one pick in a draft where they're going to have 20 other picks. Okay. So that one pick will not make or break this draft, and it will not turn their system around. Okay. And the odds of that one pick being even a, Vinny Pasquantino level of value are pretty remote. And so you got to put it in those terms. I think you got to really think about that. I am very happy with nailing that prediction there. I'm just going to say, am I shadow running the Royals? I'm not going to say it. But I might be shadow running the Royals. Mike, let's talk a little bit about, as we sort of prepare, we got 20 minutes until Cleveland is supposed to be on the clock. Maybe we should be talking a little bit about this draft specifically. What are your thoughts on who lies at the top of the draft? Right now, I have essentially 3 tiers outlined. I have the Charlie Condon, Travis Bazana, and JJ Weatherholt tier. A lot of talk about Weatherholt being maybe 1-1 because Cleveland might want to save some money. In tier 2, I have Jack Caglianone, Chase Burns, Hagen Smith, Connor Griffin, Bryce Rayner. And then in tier 3, I have Nick Kurtz and Braden Montgomery. What are your thoughts on that as a sort of organization for the top picks? What are you thinking about the top of this draft?
That is pretty much exactly how I would have them. I would probably have Bryce Rayner down one more tier because I'm not as high on him as I am Connor Griffin, but I think he's definitely a top 12 guy. I think probably in just about anything you do. I think you've got it laid out really well there. I think the crazy thing, and this is the thing that we always talk about when we talk about the Major League Baseball draft, is money is going to play. Draft strategy is much more complicated when it comes to the Major League Baseball draft, and that draft pool plays such a big factor in what some teams like to do. I don't think you're talking about a JJ Weatherholt as the best player in prospect in this draft, with the highest ceiling in this draft for sure, but I think because he is a very good prospect and he might be willing to take less money, you're hearing a lot of juice to him at 1 for Cleveland. A guy that we've liked for a very long time, a guy that Alex Duvall's come on the show, talked about him quite a bit as well. I like a lot of these guys for the Royals. There's a couple I would stay away from. I'd go Connor Griffin over. If you're going high school, I'd go Connor Griffin over Bryce Rayner. I know there's been a lot of talk about how the Royals like Bryce Rayner. I would stay away from Nick Kurtz, and I prefer, of the college pitchers, I prefer Hagen Smith over Chase Burns.
You and I are actually which is weird. You would think Mike and I are on the exact same page a lot because we're twins. We've been together for a long, long time of our lives. We do this podcast, everything. We actually disagree on prospects and things like that a lot, like especially when it comes to drafts and things like that. Mike thought Ben Roethlisberger was going to be a bust, and so I'm like, I can't really respect his opinion. But yeah, I actually agree with everything you just said there, right? Like I'm Griffin over Rayner. I'm Smith over Burns. I'm a little bit concerned about Nick Kurtz, both because of the first base profile and the physicality and things like that, though there are great things about all these guys. What's weird about these guys is you're going to hear us talk a little bit about the things they do well and a little bit about the things they don't do well. But what you need to remember is these are the best players in this draft, okay? Like, no matter what, Nick Kurtz is better than whoever's going to get taken at 40, right? Like, and so probably, right? And so we might be saying, oh, we're not big on Nick Kurtz. I'd be big on Nick Kurtz at 12, 13. Like, I think he's that good, right? Like, but I wouldn't be big. I'm not a big top 5, top 6, top 7 guy for Nick Kurtz, right? And so think about that as we sort of talk about these sorts of distinctions that we're making. It's not necessarily that we don't like a guy. It's just that not in this spot, not at this pick, that sort of thing. Mike, you mentioned all the smoke around Bryce Rayner and Hagen Smith and that sort of thing. I'm going to talk a little bit about that here in a second after we read another ad. I'm sorry, guys. We have to get these ads in during this, and I want to make sure they get in because last year we completely forgot them. Royals Weekly is brought to you by All In Physical Therapy. You already know that All In Physical Therapy helped turn our mother into the human version of the Death Star. But what you don't know is that Mom loved her experience at All In Physical Therapy because of the one-on-one attention she got from the staff at All In. I've lost my place.
They guarantee.
You go ahead. They guarantee a personalized one-on-one experience to suit the needs of patients recovering from total joint surgeries, sports injuries, or any kind of injury or pain.
No one can get me over the pain of the following names: Bubba Starling, Hunter Dozier, Kyle Zimmer, Ash Russell.
You got to let it go, buddy. You got to let it go, buddy. All In Physical Therapy is owned and operated by Tommy Freevert with locations in Blue Springs, Lee Summit, and coming soon to Belton. But most importantly, they're in network for nearly all insurance providers.
Foster Griffin, Aaron Crow, Christian Cologne.
All right, that's enough. If you're a high school athlete recovering from injury or someone bouncing back from a brand new hip or knee, check out the best physical therapy in the KC Metro at allin-pt.com. That's ALLIN-pt.com. Or give them a call at 816-427-5300. That's 816-427-5300. Mike, we're talking a little bit about Hagen Smith and Bryce Rayner. Can you just give us a little breakdown on what those two players are? Who are Hagen Smith and Bryce Rayner?
Absolutely. Bryce Rayner is a high school shortstop from Texas, and he left-handed, probably real athlete. The way I described him today on Threads was he's your typical top 10 to 15 high school kid. He is crazy. He's a good athlete. He's got good, what you would say, projectable power from the left side. A lot of people think he can stick at shortstop, and if he doesn't, he goes to third base and plays an exceptional third base. He's played in all the high-end prospect circuits. He is a very, very good player from the left side and has played against kind of the top talent of high school baseball as well. Hagen Smith is kind of the reverse of that. He's a college guy out of University of Arkansas, got injured his junior year of high school, or was out his entire junior year of high school with Tommy John surgery, came back and threw 7 no-hitters as a senior in Texas, and had looks in the draft coming out of high school, but chose to go to Arkansas instead. He is a lefty with a somewhat deceptive and funky delivery, but he throws a fastball averaging around 96. It'll get up to 97, 99 even at times. He was a level of dominant at the University of Arkansas that is hard to fathom. And if you want to know what dominance looks like, go watch Hagen Smith pitch against Oregon State this year. He struck out every batter for 5 innings against one of the best teams in college baseball. It is unbelievable.
Travis Bazana multiple times.
It was unreal. I've seen it a couple times now. It's crazy. Really good fastball that gets swing and miss in the zone. Really good slider as well. Working on a split finger kind of changeup pitch as well. He used that a lot more this year. But he's the kind of guy who he's not Paul Skeens. He's not that level that everybody thought of, but he is a step down from that. He was that dominant in college.
Josh, we're talking about Hagen Smith and Bryce Rayner. What are your thoughts on those two as getting the most talk of interest from the Royals?
It makes sense for the Rayner talk. Going back to like Brian Bridges' years with Atlanta, he was leaned a little bit pretty heavy on prep side. So that's kind of, it came down to those two. I would expect Rayner a little bit more, but I'd be pumped about either one of those guys. It's kind of where I'm at with both of those guys.
We should welcome you. Welcome Josh Keiser, co-host of One Royal Way. He's going to hang with us for a few minutes before he has to hop off and jump on his own podcast. They're doing a live episode as well. They do live episodes every time, right? You guys are live every week, right?
We've started to do that about 6 or 7 weeks in, and the Royals are like 1-5 in those games when they play simultaneously with us. So
Ditch it. You owe it to the fan base. You got to stop doing it live.
Yeah, you owe it to that is the running joke that anytime we go live, it's just a shit show. So that's where we are. But yes, every Tuesday night around 8:00 is what we're shooting for. We'll be on One Royal Way YouTube channel, and then it'll be in podcast form the day after. So a lot of fun we have, a little similar to you guys.
Yeah, excellent stuff from you and Joel Penfield and Jordan Foote over there with the Kansas City Sports Network. It's a great listen. Make sure you're listening to that. My thoughts on Rayner are probably a little less than everyone else's, and it's not because I don't like him. Again, I try and make this point to like people. It's more like Mike. I thought you hit it on the head when you said he's a lot like a lot of high school prospects you see who go 10 to 15 in the first round. He is tall. He is athletic. He is, can play a premium position, probably stick there, got the big arm because he pitches too and that sort of thing. The thing that I worry about is when I'm looking at like a raw ball of clay to play with in a prep player, I want a tools monster. I want a straight up tool shed.
Bobby Witt Jr.
I want Bobby Witt Jr. or I want Connor Griffin, right? Like to me, Connor, if those two are inevitably paired with each other and compared, and I look at Connor Griffin and I see a tool shed. I see a dude who's like, because I've seen a bunch of Bryce Rayner like videos and things like that of him taking swings and doing batting practice and hitting in games. I'm not overly impressed with his swing. I'm not overly impressed with a significant number of things about him. Now, every high school player is like that, though. They'll all get better. They'll all be coached and all that sort of thing. So what am I really just looking for then? I'm looking for a real athlete, like a true – I'm not going to have to worry about exit velocities with this guy because he tattoos baseballs. That's Connor Griffin. I'm not going to have to worry about like ability to stick at a premium position because he can play center field. That's Connor Griffin. And so there are some other types of things that I worry about with Rayner that are just like, is he going to just come in too middle of the road, right? And then I watch, this is a really kind of vibes only thing, but I've seen clips of Connor Griffin and I'm like, this dude frickin' loves baseball. This guy is an animal out there on the field. And so I'm looking for that level of like engagement too, if I'm looking for makeup, right? And so, yeah, that's my thoughts on him. Smith is my number one pitching prospect in this draft. I like him a little bit better than Burns because I have concerns with Burns' fastball and some delivery stuff. It's got some effort in it and that sort of thing. And so I'm a little bit more, I'm a little higher on Smith, but there is great stuff there from Burns as well. Guys, I want to talk a little bit about, go ahead, Josh.
I was just going to say, I got Burns higher, but if either one of those guys ended up on the team, I'd be jacked up for it for sure.
Yeah, that'd be a real jewel, and you'd be talking about him along with, Caderna and those other guys. I mean, whoever, if Smith or Burns gets drafted, he's the number one pitching prospect in the system by miles.
Well, I think there's a couple good college pitchers that can be gotten at 30. What is it, 36 or not? Sorry, 41, whatever it is.
41.
41. Yeah. I think there's a couple good arms there. To be honest with you guys, that are like one or two small things away from being in the that 15 range or whatever. So
Absolutely. I did want to ask about this class as a whole, because there's a lot of conversations about what it might mean that the Royals traded pick 39. Do they not like this class? I've heard some people really dogging on this class. What are your thoughts on what this draft is in terms of its entirety?
I don't get it. I don't see that at all. Here's why I think some people might think this is a kind of a weak class, because in that 25 to 50 range, there is a lot of prep guys in that range that are like, hey, this a really good athlete. Sometimes the high school kids that fall in that range are good athletes with maybe one elite skill. They're a great fielder and a great athlete. They have a great hit tool and a great athlete. Stuff like that. You usually see the hit tool and the fielding thing a lot more because they haven't developed that power yet as high schoolers. But I think there's a lot of those guys, and I think there's a lot of intriguing arms at the high school level in that area as well. A lot of high velocity high school arms and things like that. But I don't think that this is a bad class as a whole. When I look at, and obviously we don't have time. I don't have time anyway to go through all 250 prospects or whatever that are going to be taken. Yeah, right. I don't
abandon your family. Do
it. We're almost there already. Okay. So, but
Dad went out for smokes and he never came back.
He never came back, right?
He's wandering the backfields at LSU right now.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's what he's doing.
That's what I'm saying.
He's hitting up Hutchinson Community College baseball coaches for deep dive info. But when I look at about the same number of guys that I look at every year, I look at usually the top 100, and I see really intriguing guys in the middle there. Even I'm not as big on some of those high school guys in this year's, but there's some good ones. I'm really intrigued by some of the college arms that are going to be in the middle of this draft. A couple bats too. You and I talked about Tommy White as a guy who may go a little bit deeper, that maybe is like, why would you pass on this guy? So yeah, just I don't see this being a down draft. Josh, what do you think?
I mean, I'm more of an aggregator when it comes to the draft stuff. I'm not eyes on my own perspective here, but it does seem like the overall consensus is that it kind of, once you get past the top 9 or 10, you start to run into guys with the big red flags that, you know, might not offset the upside just as much as you want them to. And then after that, it's considered pretty widely shallow at that point relative to other classes that we've kind of gone through. And that trade kind of does tell me that the Royals kind of feel the same way about that, in that it seemed like the 39 pick was, I put it on Twitter, like probably the 5th most valuable trade piece that they had at this trade deadline. The shelf life was there. They kind of had to pull the trigger if they were going to include that. But I do think that it also kind of signaled to me that they did believe it was a little bit around that time, like relatively speaking, they could probably find plenty of value outside of that. And the pool bonuses, you know, loss is somewhat big, but also not really considering where the pick was. So to me, it definitely seemed like the Royals kind of thought that, you know, around that 39 pick, they could probably find their way of a couple guys that could be there at 41 that they just like just as much as the value to see in Hunter Harvey. So I kind of got the same vibes from the Royals, that they thought this draft class was similar to the scouts and the sites, and everybody kind of thinking the same thing.
Yeah, and that might be the case. They might see weakness when you get beyond that top, 30 or so. My thinking is like, I think what people inevitably do is compare this to the last draft, right? And so last year's draft was just insane in terms of its top side, in terms of its depth. It was one of the best drafts we've seen in the last 10 years, at least, with guys like Skeens and Cruz and Langford and Clark. And it was so.
Blake Mitchell. You left Blake Mitchell out of there.
Yeah, Blake Mitchell, obviously. I mean, he's done quite well, but I mean, think about the dudes who we saw hit minor league baseball and have immediate success. Matt Shaw, Kyle Teal, Paul Skeens is already in Major League Baseball. And so, we just saw so many guys hit minor league baseball and have immediate success. Nolan Schanuel was another one from last year's class who made it to the Angels immediately. Like, there were just so many guys who had bunches of big success right away. And people knew that last year's draft was going to be a big one, that maybe we're sort of comparing in unfair ways a little bit, yes, is this draft as good as last year's? It is not, right? Like, I think it's pretty undeniably not as good as last year, especially at the top, where you have some good hitters, some intriguing hitters, but none of them are like playing premium positions the way Dylan Cruz did and that sort of thing. And so you have some good starting pitching, but none of them are going to be Paul Skeens. I don't think anybody thinks that's going to be the case. And so, it's one of those deals where it's like, yeah, it may not be as good as last year's, but it's not like Luke Hochevar year or whatever. It's not like, I don't think it's to those depths. I think there's just too much talent in both prep and college baseball at this point for that for that kind of fall off. And so, yeah, I agree with Mike. I see a lot of talent, especially raw talent, in those later back into the first round, early part of the second round. And we'll talk about some more of those guys as the night gets going.
And if they are prep heavy, like it would make sense that a lot of those guys are raw, that you are working with a ball of clay. And that's a crapshoot of any crapshoot. It's really what it is. So I'm interested to see if there's anybody in that scouting department be like, let's roll some dice, baby. Let's see what we could do with some of these tools and grab some value. I'm excited for this.
That would be wild to me. Real quick before Josh leaves, I want to hear your thoughts, Josh. Who do you think is going to be available when the Royals pick? And then of that group of people, who do you want them to take?
Oh, I got to think. I mean, Condon and Weatherholt sound like they're going to be 1 and 2. It doesn't sound like it sounds like that is consensus depending on the order. It kind of depends. So I think by then we're looking at Hagen Smith. We're looking at Braden Montgomery, Nick Kurtz, maybe Caglianone. And of that group, I still probably would lean Connor Griffin just for that upside. That's what this system is lacking as a whole, is a lot of talented on the upside. They got a lot of depth of, but not great. So I'd be very, very excited if they were able to grab Connor Griffin at 106, bet on the upside, develop into who they want, and be that 5-tool guy ready to hit the ground running in 2028. Maybe that's wishful thinking, but yeah, that would be what I would want. But really, again, as long as they don't pick anybody outside of that top 9 or 10, I'm going to be an A+ grade no matter what. So it's really a pass fail, I think, at this point, as long as they don't mess
Which
it up.
I always thought was easier.
So
Mike did his entire college degree pass fail. So we're
that's right, 100%. I shout out UCM. That's really where I'm at. Like, as long as we're drafting, we don't play the slot games. It doesn't seem like it's the draft class for it. So just give me one of those top 9 and I'll be a happy boy.
All right, Mike, how about you? Who's going to be available and who you taking?
Oh, I think there's going to be at least 2 surprise guys available. The big, like, kind of name, gosh, I'm taking Hagen Smith.
Mm-hmm.
Give me some. I think he's going to be there still. Give me some high end college, close to the Major League Baseball starting pitching, and I think there's so much that you can do with that. You know, I've always been a guy who said, "Hey, give him a September in the bullpen before you call him up that next to the rotation that next year." I always liked that. I think Hagen Smith would be a great candidate for that, and I think he could be doing it next year. And so now, some of that will depend on the development of that changeup, but you know, we'll see. But he's the guy I really, really like. I've been watching a ton of video on him, and I kind of fell in love with him.
Mm-hmm. Another lefty for the bullpen? Yes, please.
Why not, right?
Can't have enough lefties.
Hopefully Will Smith is,
Yeah.
They just traded for a righty, Josh. I mean, what do you want from this?
What do you want from
What
them?
else do we want? That's really. I'm really just here squeaky wheeling is all I'm doing.
All right, thank you so
have
much,
fun tonight,
Josh.
Josh.
Have a good draft night. Thank you so much, Josh. Please do not abandon us to go listen to One Row Away. And Josh Keiser, stay here with us. I'm sure you'll all have a fun time. I think one of the top 4 guys is making it to pick 6. I think it's either
It always happens.
It always happens, and this is a year where there is no definitive talent in the same way there has been in years past. So last year it was like, okay, Skeens, Cruz, and Langford. Everyone was like, those are the top 3 college guys. Some people liked Max Clark. I was like, okay, whatever. He made it into that group. And it was pretty much chalk last year, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you'll remember the year before that, what's his name? He just debuted with the Twins. Brooks Lee made it all the way down to like 7 with the Twins right before the Royals picked it, like 8, or I think, or 11 or 12. I can't remember exactly. But it was one of those things where one of those guys who was in the top fell a little bit, right? Like this is the same type of draft where there's not as much distinction between guys at the top. And so teams are going to play money games. And a lot of people aren't sold on the upside of guys at the top. And so they're like, why don't we just play money games? Why don't we just take some talent that's further on back and just try and make it a numbers game, get better talent throughout the thing, right? Like I know a lot of Royals fans hate that notion for the Royals, but it is a strategy a lot of teams employ.
Cam Collier is another guy that dropped further than a lot of teams thought that he would. He dropped into the low teens or 12 or somewhere around there. And he's been killing it recently. So he's, Jack Caglianone is the guy that is the kind of name there that MLB Pipeline has in the top 4 that I think if there's going to be one that you're like, oh, he's dropping a little bit, I think it's going to be him. I know there's some signability issues with Condon. He wants a pretty high number. He wants 1-1 money, even if he doesn't go 1-1 possibly. So that's an interesting one. But Caglianone is the guy that I think might fall a little bit.
Yes, reportedly Condon wants $9.2 million, which would break Skeens' record set last year. I don't know that he that's one of the reasons he's sort of cooled. Cleveland has cooled on him. They want to pay someone less money than that. Mike, we got a question in the chat to go back to that Harvey trade. They want us to give it a grade. If you had to give that Harvey trade a grade, what are you giving out as a grade for that Harvey trade?
I am an educator. Know a little bit about grading. I'm giving that Harvey trade a B+. It would have been an A if he had a little bit more control. He's got a year and a half, which isn't bad at all, but a little bit more control would have been a little higher. But no, I love it. A B+ to A- somewhere in that range is I think it's a great trade, and I think it's smart that they start with the bullpen and start early because they still got time to trade for a bat if they want to try and do that. And I think they gave up enough that they might still have a piece or two to use for something offensive, some sort of offensive help.
Yeah, I'm going to go with an A- for that Harvey trade because, yeah, you take a little damage giving up that 39 pick, and Caden Wallace is a good, not great prospect. Oh, hold on. Alex Duvall is trying to get in to the chat, but it won't let him, or to get into the studio, but it won't let him. Oh, there he is. There he
see-
is. There's our
probably-
guy.
Probably working some janky internet out in the
There's
middle of the
our
wilderness.
guy.
Exactly.
I can only see your chest and the bottom of your chin. That could just be me, though.
Well,
No, he joined with some weird orientation, but he looks
those are my
great.
best features. I don't know what else you want.
Okay, good. Oh, you're in a pitching ninja shirt on there?
Yeah.
He looks great. He looks great.
Is that better?
Hey, Alex. Oh, that's better. Now I can
Is
see
that-
your beautiful face. Yes, most of your beautiful face. It's great.
This is good.
You look great. Alex, we're talking about who might be available. Actually, we're grading the Harvey deal. I just gave it an A-. What are your thoughts on this Hunter Harvey deal? If you had to give it a grade, what would you give it?
A. That's a really good move. I agree with some of the thoughts on Twitter. The draft is relatively weak. They already had a huge bonus pool. It's not like, they lost a ton in terms of bonus pool.
Yeah, they went
from like 6 to
Went
8.
to eighth amount. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not bad. Did you? But you were a Caden Wallace guy. I mean, you like Caden Wallace. Does that hurt at all? Giving him up?
No, I think you have guys like Caden Wallace in the system already. Michael Garcia, Nick Lofton. I don't know that there's a huge separation between those guys. I mean, Michael Massey's playing second base. Nick Lofton can play second base. Not that he's that good, but I don't think the gap was that big. And so I think you had 3 guys that were very similar in terms of overall value across the board. And so, yeah, I'm good with it.
We got someone who posed a question in the chat. If the pick itself was obviously the more valuable of the 2 assets, is the pick more valuable than Caden Wallace? I don't think it is personally, but it might be.
It's close. I mean, Caden Wallace was a second-round pick or that pick. So it's like, honestly, if you said the pick was more valuable, I wouldn't think you were crazy. I mean, in terms of where they fell in the draft, they're very similar.
Yeah, and if a team really finds that crop of high school prep players that are graded in that 25 to 50 range, which there's a lot of them, if they like that group, they might see it as more valuable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, what's interesting to me is that Caden Wallace was taken in roughly the same area, and he's had a professional career that you would say tracks pretty well with someone taken in that area, right? He hasn't taken off in some way that's like, oh, he's going to be a superstar, but he hasn't tanked his prospect value either. He has sort of just moved right
Steady
along
progression
through professional baseball. I think I've had questions about whether or not the power will ever develop into enough to be worthy of a third baseman who's not going to be Gold Glove or anything like that at third, probably. I don't think, but you're not saying he hasn't certainly like tanked his prospect value in any sort of way. And so it's interesting that to me, that makes the value of those 2 things relatively close there, because I looked the other day, Caden Wallace is still only 22 years old in Double A, right? Like he was a draft eligible sophomore. He's still really young, and so there's a decent chance that he finds that power or finds the stroke that's going to make him a true offensive threat. And then you're looking at the upside of that pick. Alex, go ahead.
I also think it's interesting that the Royals are pushing, like just in general, trading an asset long term for asset now and gone after next year. It clearly tells you that they think, in my opinion, less about what they think of their team, more what they think of the AL, that this is a weak American League. I tweeted out Boston has a gauntlet for the next month after the All-Star break. You've got a jump on Houston and Seattle. I don't think the Royals are terribly far away from getting themselves in. And the thing the Royals have going for them now, and when we talked back in the middle of their hot streak, I said I still don't think they make the playoffs. And I still think if you made me bet 50-50 one way or the other, I'd bet no. However, the Royals are built very similarly to that 2014 group in that, I mean, not roster construction, but if they could get in, they've got a puncher's chance because they have the best.
I was thinking that yesterday.
In the American League. They have the best rotation.
Well, and here's the deal.
crazy.
Your one of your weaknesses gets better because you can take Alec Marsh out of that rotation and put him into the bullpen. At least, or Brady Singer or whatever, kind of whatever you think is the best one. Take him out, and now your bullpen just got better too, and that was one of the deficient areas. So it's like, yeah, I was thinking that exact same thing. They just got to get in,
And And if they get in, they're looking at a bullpen now that is Hunter Harvey, Chris Bubich, maybe Alec Marsh, James MacArthur, Sam Long, who's been incredible, right? Like it gets a lot better if you sort of think of it in those terms. So yeah, getting in will be the difficult part. And another thing for them, like, yeah, their offense is inconsistent, but when it's hot, it produces a lot of runs. Like they have offensive tools and offensive upside. The problem is they have too many down times, right? Like, and so it wouldn't surprise me if they get into the playoffs and they have enough guys in the lineup getting hot at the right time that they actually just go on a run like the 14 team did, right? Like that would not surprise me in any way, right? Like, which is in some ways the formula for being a small market playoff team now, which is just get in, maybe you'll get hot and run all the way to the World Series, right? Like it's possible. It does happen.
And they
Alex,
go ahead.
Sorry, I got to get your perspective on some of these draft picks before picks start happening here. Who do you think will be available still when the Royals pick? And two, who do you really like for them as a pick?
So I've been on Twitter saying that I love
too much. I will also note that Joe Doyle is reporting that J.J. Weatherholt will not be the pick by Cleveland. I don't know if that's the case. Yeah. He's just hearing from multiple sources that Weatherholt will not be the pick for Cleveland. So that's going to change a lot of stuff.
I think it's Bazana. I think it's going to be chalk.
Okay.
And so the thing with Hagen Smith is I think he's by far the best pitching prospect in this class. And he's a guy that, look, you would not do this. This would be totally what's the word? Totally irresponsible. But he could absolutely Brandon Finnegan his way into a big league bullpen. Right?
You're giving too many of our fans hope.
I just said this with Josh Keiser. I just said next year he's in the bullpen. I just said that.
I honestly, he is not Paul Skeens, but I think you could at the end of next season introduce him to the big league rotation. He has such a unique look that in a short window in September, he won't get figured out that quickly. It's not like if he's going to pitch at all this year, he needs to go straight to Double A. He's entirely too good for A ball. He's probably going to tear up Double A. Honestly, he's just really advanced, and the look is so unique that I don't understand why people shy away from it so much. Like, the reliever risk. It's like, okay, whoa, like no, like this is what we need more of. Is these unique looks of guys who can hold 95 deep into outings. Like this kid is awesome.
I'm sorry, with the way arms are, show me a pitcher who's not a reliever risk. Show me a pitcher who is not. That's just the nature of pitching these days. Is you're doing so much damage to this thing. You're putting it at so much risk. Everyone is a reliever risk, like, either for effectiveness or for injury. They're all reliever risks, and so you should treat them all as such. I don't understand that notion hardly at all. Okay, if it is Bazana, but let's play this out. So is that who you want for the Royals at 6? Is Hagen Smith? Even if Caglione, even if one of those top 4 guys make it down to 6, are you?
Yeah. Okay. I would take Weatherholt. I would gamble on the hamstring. Okay. I would not take Caglione. I don't want anything to do with that unless later in the obviously depends on where you're picking. At number 6, I don't want any parts of it.
Because of the first base profile?
And
he's a good athlete.
Chase rates are insane.
They weren't as bad this year.
Can you guarantee me that the Royals have the ability to fix that profile of hitter? Because that has not traditionally been their strength.
No, it has not.
It really hasn't, and you can just name Sully Matias and
and
so many others, right? Like
even a guy like Salvi who seemingly has improved it slightly. That's all been done at the major league level. Like it's not happening in minor league baseball. So yeah, it's tough. And I'm trying to think. Did Ivan Melendez? I mean, I know he's right-handed, but did he have that level of chase? I mean, was he at that level? And he wasn't taken that high, near that high.
No. Well, and again, Cags is. I mean. The reason you consider it is an electric talent. And I love the player. If they take him, I'll be excited. It's just I'm going to be so anxious, like, oh, boy, here we go. Like, the Royals don't need that right now. Like, in my opinion, the Royals farm system is so bad. Go get something that you think can be, like, a close for sure. Like, the closest thing you think to a safety net, sell some upside, get you a safety net and Weatherholt. Well, and even Weatherholt, I get it with the injuries. I just think sometimes that soft tissue stuff, is more overcomable than like if it was like a back
Especially
with-
recently, we've figured a lot more out on how to handle those things.
right.
Yeah.
I agree. And so I look at it and think, take Hagen Smith, take Weatherholt, and then take your gambles later in the draft. Don't waste the 6th overall pick on something that you have to gamble on and develop. Just be a little bit safer. Now, is Cags a potential superstar? Yeah. Like, there's some Hunter Green in there. Like, it's electric. But I just don't know if I trust the Royals to get it right. So,
Yeah, that's a legit fear. I think, and I don't think enough people are talking about it. People talk about Caglione like, oh, he's a surefire two-way guy. He's gonna relieve. It's like there are a lot of teams that I'm sure like, nope, day one you're not gonna pitch anymore, right? Like that's gonna be a lot of teams, and so I don't even know if the Royals would even let him pitch. And if you take that out of the sort of projection for him, what does the value then start to look like? Because now you're talking about a first baseman in the first round, and what have we seen from first baseman in the first round over the last few years? You've seen Andrew Vaughn, you've seen Spencer Torkelson go one. These are not huge success stories. And so you worry about a first baseman going. Now, I think Cags has much more raw power than both of those guys, but you still have the swing and miss. You still have the chase. There are still issues there related to him as an offensive player. And if you are a first baseman in the first round, you have to hit like an all-star. That's like the only thing you can do. So you have to hit like an all-star or you're worthless. Yeah, it will be Travis Bazzana. I think they just made the pick.
Yeah,
Cleveland has gone Travis Bazzana 1-1.
They did.
Dude, how is it that the entire AL Central just gets handed gifts by the lottery, and the Royals have gotten absolutely hosed both years now?
Yep.
It sucks because Bazzano is my number one player in this draft, and if I put out a tweet earlier today, if I'm Cleveland, he's the one I'm taking, and I'm not playing the money games that they might think. They might save a little bit of money from Bazzano, but they're not going to save much.
I mean, this dude, he is so good.
He's so good. He is
And
so
works
good.
like a maniac.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, and like, okay, so Cleveland gets this just handed to them. Last year, it was Minnesota getting Walker Jenkins and Brooks Lee in back-to-back drafts. Like, who is? It just whatever, man.
But wait, in everyone everyone else's defense, when good things have dropped right in our lap, sometimes we've passed on those too. So
That's a fact. Whatever.
who was it?
but
Chase Young a few years ago.
But hey, who has the most recent World Series in the AL Central? Huh? Let me ask you that.
Good point.
Flags fly forever, people. Flags fly forever.
You can't bring that.
Can't bring that down. All right, so it's Bazzana 1-1. If you don't know about him, he's an Australian-born player. Played at Oregon State, second baseman, left-handed hitter. I don't know how. I'm thinking Jeff Kent as a hitter. Left-handed Jeff Kent as a hitter, and then I think
Looks more like Bagwell.
Yeah, I think
jacked.
the defense will be better than Jeff Kent's was. I think he's an above-average second baseman once somebody starts working with him, especially if they have a good infield coach. And so, yeah, Bazzana to the Guardians, that's not something the Royals love to see for the next 10 years or so. They actually are going to hate to see it. And so,
Dude, I didn't know Stephen Kwan played at Oregon State.
I didn't either.
Me either.
They're just showing it on the highlight reel here. For
They're
Oregon
also
State.
showing Travis Bazzana hitting 450-foot tanks.
Absolute nuclear.
Big time
He
exit
is.
velocities from Bazzana. He trains at Driveline up in the Pacific Northwest and just has incredible power from his frame. And he's also got a great hit tool, and his approach is like the thing that I salivate over. It's just insanely good.
He reminds me of Vinny Pasquantino with a natural ability to lift the baseball.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
a good way of putting it.
Yeah.
Like,
In
it's
fact,
just-
he
it's
is going
so
to have.
smooth.
You imagine he will have at least Vinny Pasquantino raw power, at least.
Yeah.
And so, and you were talking like 60, 65 grade maybe raw power for Bazzana. And so, yeah, it's a great profile. He will only probably play second base. He is not a premium defensive position guy. He's not going to play center or short or catcher or anything like that. But if you're going to go out and be a all-star caliber hitter every year, it doesn't really matter what position you're playing. So.
Did I see that he's the first second baseman ever taken first overall?
I did not see that yet, but
It tells you how far we're coming as a game.
yeah,
Like,
no
we
kidding. Well, yeah,
identify
it's certainly
the
you certainly
value.
don't see it often if it ever has happened like that. Yeah, you just don't see that.
Ooh, Keith Law is teasing a small surprise at 2, according to
Ooh,
what he's hearing. So
you
that
think
must mean it's
Connor
not
Griffin?
Condon. Ooh,
Connor
Chase
Griffin?
Burns is what Joe Doyle is saying. Chase Burns at 2
No.
to Cincinnati.
Dude, that fits their profile.
We
Hunter
told you.
I
Green.
We
guess
told
it
you,
is kind of
everybody.
Hunter Greenish.
We say
Well,
this
no, Hunter
every
Green's got an
year.
elite fastball. People are worried about Burns' fastball. I mean,
Yeah, but its
I'm not.
velocity is elite. You're not worried about his
That's true.
fastball? Why
No,
not?
He pitched. Where did they pitch? We got his data on TrackMan, and it was stupid. You almost can't build a fastball better than Chase Burns's. It is silly.
I saw
It's
something the other
silly.
day. Somebody was wondering if those were a little inflated because of the ball they're using in college now. I could be wrong on that. Somebody said that.
I wonder, the thing that concerns me about his fastball is the numbers that I've seen against it, which is like, there's a decent amount of slug against that fastball. Now, I've heard people say, well, that's fine. Give him a 2-seamer, give him a cutter, give him something to make the fastball better. You're not going to change the fact that he throws a 70-grade slider and that he's got, 4
Good.
quality
I like his
pitches and
curveball.
throws
I
strikes.
really like his curveball.
Chase Burns is an electric talent. I mean, there's just no other way to slice it. There are concerns, I think. The delivery has concerns in it. It's high effort, so you worry about things like injury. But, this is pitching in 21st century baseball.
that's
There's worry about
every
injury with
pitcher.
everybody, right? And so get the guy who's got the electric stuff. It looks like Cincinnati is going to get the guy who has the electric stuff. Alex, you know more about pitching than Mike and I combined, and times about 3. So what do you like most about Burns, and what have you seen from him?
It is absolutely electric stuff. I mean, it is. Who's a good? It is Tyler Glasnow level of just blow your doors away. The thing that I don't like about Burns' delivery, and the reason I had Hagen Smith above him, is that it is such a timing oriented release that if it reminds me, this is a dumb comp, and I'm not actually suggesting this, but it reminds me a little bit of like the Dolphins offense. Like if you're not hitting 1-2-step throw, 1-2-3-step throw in time, in rhythm, then the whole offense gets out of sync. Like if Chase Burns is, and they're showing it here, if he doesn't get that arm caught up to the front of his release, the command goes wonky. Nothing works the way it's supposed to. It is so timing based. Now, we've seen, well, I won't use his name, but we've seen guys like him before be able to harness that delivery and make really good careers out of it. Win Cy Youngs out of it. Blake Snell is a good example. It's just a lot harder than a guy like Brady Singer, who's a smooth operator and theoretically shouldn't have had problems adding and subtracting from his arsenal, even though Brady Singer has no interest in adding or subtracting from his arsenal. Whatever, but you get the idea. It is such a difficult thing to maintain long term that I like Chase Burns, but if it were the Royals, no thank you. I don't trust them at all to help him refine that delivery.
Well, we've
So,
seen guys.
I know
Go ahead,
nothing
Mike.
about pitching, but when I watched the very first game that I watched him pitch, it was that way. He hit a stretch there where he could not throw a strike, and what I noticed right away was like, because I don't know anything about pitching mechanics, but I know a little bit about football quarterback mechanics, and he has a very long swing. That hand comes down to his damn back leg knee, and then comes around, and so that's a really long arm swing for that, and can create great velocity, but can also get you in exactly what Alex described, and to where you're sailing balls left and right. And so, yeah, I was a little bit concerned about that as well.
You
We
guys
have
know hang on really quick. You guys know I'm a
Yeah.
Mizzou fan. Do you know how much how irate it makes me to watch Tony Vitello do stuff in orange? Like just how easily Mizzou could have had him running their baseball program and just said no. Nah.
I don't know, man.
We're making you the next AD. I'll tell you that. I will say that we have
Hey,
seen.
We tried to
We
get
have seen-
freaking the basketball coach at KU too. That didn't work out either. Remember that? Bill Self was going to be the coach here at one point, right?
I will die arguing that Quinn Snyder was not a bad hire. He just couldn't play off the blow.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Allegedly. Let's throw that in there for legal reasons. All right, Mark,
was
what are you
real.
thinking?
I just had a thought on this notion because the type of pitcher Alex was describing, I tried to think to myself, okay, what are the examples we've seen of that type of pitcher? And the guy who came to my mind was Tim Lincecum, honestly, who has a lot of moving parts to a delivery and had a stretch of his career where it was all on time a lot of the time, but you also saw that start to break down fairly quickly. He was out of baseball by the time he was 34 years old, something like that. And some of that's body type and things like that, but those longer, sort of more mechanically complicated deliveries can lead to those stretches of having trouble commanding and that sort of thing. And then ultimately, sometimes people worry about they lead to injury as well. And so,
who was it?
Tim Lincecum,
Tim
as an
Lincecum.
example of that.
How about Brad Keller?
Oh yeah, that's another good one.
Yeah.
Just too much going on. It can't get simplified. It's hard to rein in. I'll tell you who I would take if I was Colorado, by the way, is if I'm Colorado, I'm taking Jack Caglianone and I'm letting
Just
him do
for
both.
fun. Just
Let
for
him do
fun.
both.
What the
You
hell?
need pitchers. You need guys.
He's
with that
going to
power.
hit balls so far out of that place.
You need
Your
stars,
system
dude.
sucks so much you need a pitcher and a hitter right now.
Let get one. That's the thing with Colorado and Oakland both. You need stars. Go draft a star. Like
Could be.
you
So-
have to draft them.
So the question is now in my mind, where is Charlie Condon going? Right? Because I posed this question earlier today, maybe, right? But whoever takes him, unless he's willing to come off of that number of 9.2, or maybe that number isn't real, maybe that's just smoke, I don't know. What's going to happen when they try and negotiate with Charlie Condon? Like, are they going to have to say, like, you're going to have to meet us in the middle? Because the slot numbers start getting significantly less, right? Like, so slot value for the Royals pick at 6 is $7.2 million. If Charlie Condon wants $9.2 million, can they $2 million over slot somebody in the first round? That's crazy, right? Like, that's insane, right? And so they'd have to try and get him down a little bit.
You're drafting somebody in 10 that you don't intend to sign.
They
if that's
did
the
with
case.
Brady Singer.
Right. They did to do it with Brady Singer. And so it might be a similar type of thing to that, right? Like, but you'll remember they had to take a bunch of senior signs. I think they ended up taking a bunch of senior signs that year, right? And what team wants to do that in this draft? It wants to say like, hey, we're gonna bypass volume altogether in this draft.
Colorado got Charlie Condon.
Okay, so it was Colorado. They decided they wanted Condon and they'll make that move. It'll be easier for them because they'll have more money than say a White Sox or a Royals or something like that. But boy, he's going to hit some tanks out of that stadium, isn't he?
Mm-hmm.
Remind me to tell you my hot takes about Charlie Condon off the live.
Do you think it's not going to
No.
No,
We brought you
don't.
here for those hot takes on front of everybody.
There's a lot of Jonathan India to his game. I don't know that I'm buying the raw power numbers. There
are people talking about the ball. That's all I'm saying.
It was so juiced, and the bats are so much hotter than they have been in the BB Core era. I just don't know that I buy it. Nothing about his. And by the way, I would like to say that early in the season, I said Charlie Condon might go 1-1, and people are like, oh, I don't know about that. And then it was like, oh, yeah, he might. And now I'm the one backing off a little bit. So we've kind of swapped roles here. I just don't know that I see it. Like,
Alex, I got a question for you that was posed in our chat, and you'll know more about this than any of us. Do you know what kind of money colleges can offer these guys these days? Like, what's the dollar figure, NIL money from colleges that we're seeing for baseball, baseball players?
Drastically, right? LSU, Arkansas have a lot. Michigan, none. So, like, and I'm using Michigan as an example, but like the Big Ten isn't spending a ton of money on baseball, right? So it varies wildly. So depends on what your commitment is. If you're committed to LSU, they could probably find you a ton of NIL money. If you're
Texas A&M, I'm sure does.
Dude, right. Even Texas, oh my gosh, I don't even want to know. I can't imagine being a commit to Texas in 2024.
Yeah, you're talking upwards of hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars for the best players, millions even, like low
baseball,
million.
I don't know that we're going to get to the millions.
You don't think so?
I think in baseball,
the money might be spread out enough in baseball. Maybe that.
Let's use who was the big guy that just committed to Texas from the transfer portal?
Oh,
one of the bigger transfer portal names. if you made me guess ballpark, I'm gonna guess the ceiling for his signing for NIL money is 150,000. I don't think we're getting.
Oh, okay. I thought they were going big for these big ones. Okay, to bring
I
Paul
doubt
Skeens back and stuff like when he's a sophomore and things like that. Or
Yeah,
I guess
I doubt it's that much.
Yeah.
But I bet
So
it's,
that's
I
the
bet
kind of thing
you
we're
get some
talking.
guys in six-figure range.
wow.
So for these guys up here at the top of the draft who were staring down $7, $8, $9, $10 million for their signing bonuses in Major League Baseball, the 150 they might be offered to go back to LSU or go back to Vanderbilt or go back to Tennessee or,
go
back
to
Texas,
college. Yeah.
or go to college at all is not nearly as appealing. Right now, for the high school guys, they would get another chance at it at the cookie 3 years into college, right? Like, but for the college juniors, right? They go back to college, they get the 150 grand or whatever. But guess what? Next year in the draft, they're getting way less money, right? Because they're a senior now, they can't go back. And so they have no leverage in negotiation, right? And as a result, they end up getting, that's why we say, oh, they have to do senior signs to save money. That's because you can pay senior signs way less, okay? For those of you who don't understand how the money system works. And it is a very complicated money system. And so we'll see here who Oakland is now currently on the clock, which means we have 2 picks until the Royals come up. Who's left on the board? We got Caglianone on the board. We got Connor Griffin on the board. We got Bryce Rayner. We have Nick Kurtz. We have Braden Montgomery. We have Hagen Smith. Those are really the guys, right?
JJ Weatherholt still there.
Oh, JJ Weatherholt still available. I forgot about him. We saw the A's take an extremely poor man's JJ Weatherholt and Jacob Wilson last year, a guy who's more hit tool over power, who has done quite well in minor league baseball so far. This whole podcast was kind of shitting on Jacob Wilson last year, and now he's tearing through minor league baseball.
Accountability.
Yeah, that was me.
Same here. All 3 of us. It was across the board on the Royals Weekly podcast, but we'll see. Story's not over for Jacob Wilson.
They can't all be winners, all right?
Can't all be winners, can they? And so we'll see on that. But JJ Weatherholt has to present quite a appealing prospect for the A's at 4, I would imagine.
I'll tell you the only wrinkle in this I can see for the Royals is if Braden Montgomery sneaks his way in here on an underslot deal, then you're going to have your pick of the litter for the most part, and it's going to be.
Looks like it's going to be Kurtz. It's going to be Kurtz for the A's at 4.
Ooh, that's such an A's pick because he's a guy you can get for cheaper, probably.
Well, he's also an extreme plate discipline guy, a guy who takes a ton of walks, a guy who has a ton of plate discipline. In that sense, that is an A's move as well. And so
I don't want to say he's not a terrible athlete. He's not a terrible athlete.
He's not a terrible
athlete. He's just not a good athlete.
He's not a good athlete.
The A's don't give a shit anyway on that front. So
yeah,
dude,
so we'll see.
He can absolutely hammer the baseball. He's one of the guys like with Caglianone, like he's one of the ones I don't worry about the power translating to professional baseball. That's absurd.
Yeah, to me, he's Vinny that can elevate the ball. That's what he is to me. Although, he's gonna be in trouble if he doesn't elevate the ball. But yeah, Nick Kurtz, not a guy I was this high on for sure. Mark.
No, I certainly was not. So one of the reasons that I'm not a big Nick Kurtz guy is the same reason I'm not a big Jack Caglianone guy is that first base profile, like take all the things that people are saying about Caglianone and Kurtz especially, and take yourself back in time. They were saying the exact same thing about Spencer Torkelson. The exact same thing, right? Like, and I get it. He mashes baseballs in college. I get it where the offensive environment is a lot better. I get it. He's got plate discipline. Great. Good for him. But if it doesn't work, if it doesn't even work just by a little bit, because Andrew Vaughn is a fine hitter, right? But he's not a good enough hitter to play first base in Major League Baseball. And as a result, that pick is wasted. You have now wasted a first round pick because he has no defensive value, because he's not going to help you on the bases in any way. It's just all got to be offense from him. And it's got to be elite offense almost. You need this pick. They need Nick Kurtz to be at least a 120 weighted runs created plus guy in Major League Baseball for the time he's with them. Otherwise, they threw the pick away.
Which we exactly said about Vinny Pasquantino last week.
Yeah. Because that's what he is, right? Like that's what Nick Kurtz is Vinny Pasquantino. He needs to produce that same level of thing. Now, you still want to be able to find those elite mashers, and they're harder to find past the back end of the top end of the first round. And so, I understand the pick, especially if they're going to get him at a discount. If they're going to pay him like he's the 12th pick or the 10th pick, I get it. But I would not make that pick at 4 myself, because I think that there are other offensive upside options. Like I would have taken Caglianone over Kurtz, honestly, because I think the athletic profile of Caglianone is better, right? But if you're going to make that pick, I understand it to some degree. But here's my big question now. One of Caglianone or Weatherholt is getting to 6. Okay? We know that now. All right? What are your guys' thoughts on the notion that the Royals
Smith
could
will
pick
still
one
be
of them?
there.
We know, Alex, that you're not interested in Caglianone. Mike, what are your thoughts? If Caglianone, if Caglianone is still there, if Weatherholt's still there, who are you taking?
Oh, I would take Weatherholt in that situation. Yeah, for sure. I would take Weatherholt.
Oh, Joe Doyle just tweeted out, "Well, blow up your boards." And so I don't know. Something
Connor
crazy might be coming.
Griffin's still there too.
Something crazy might be coming for the White Sox too.
Good. They don't deserve good things. They don't.
No, they don't. Well, yeah, we know who's running the show, so it's probably like the pastor's kid.
Hey, you're talking to a youth pastor right there.
Sorry,
Be
buddy.
nice to him.
Hey, I love you. I love you.
Okay.
You know the qualifications, my man. For a team.
Oh, the White Sox are taking Hagen Smith. Of course they did the Royals thing. They're like, let's just what are the Royals gonna do? We'll just do that.
What would the Royals do?
We're just gonna do that.
Well,
Hey, JJ Weatherholt is on the board for the Royals. That's all I'm saying.
That makes some sense, because they also have Noah Schultz in their system. And I tweeted just the other day, they remind me of each other. These unique lefty, the Chris Sale mold, right? Just being funky from the left side, creating all kinds of lever issues for hitters. I love that for Chicago. Good for them. I hate them, but good for them. That was a good pick.
Yeah, and I like him a lot. I think there's some concern with, not concern. There's some thinking that his production, his success this year was not necessarily reflected in some of the pitch data, if that makes sense. So it's like, okay, it's not even bad pitch data. The pitch data is good. It's just you've got pitches like a fastball, a 4-seam fastball that doesn't have elite invert but has a little bit of run to it. And it's a slider that doesn't go at an elite velocity, but has a really good break to it. Although it's not exactly a sweeper, but it's not exactly, your traditional slider. And so there's some confusion maybe with his arsenal as comparing it to the production that he had, which was elite. I mean, this guy was as good as there can be in college baseball.
Here's the thing. Travis Bazzana is my number 1 player in this draft right now. But if the Royals take JJ Weatherholt, they might get the best player in this draft. If they take JJ Weatherholt, they might get the best player in this draft. That's what's crazy to me.
We know from historical precedent they are not doing that, because we want So
They're so in love with Bryce Rayner. They are so in love with Bryce Rayner.
Do not say that.
Come on, Connor Griffin.
I like Connor Griffin.
I like Connor Griffin too. Because we were there when they didn't draft Jace Young. We were there. They didn't do it with Matt Shaw. This profile of players just
college hitters. They hate them. They hate college hitters,
especially ones that don't play elite defensive positions. That's just
I'm telling you. I just cannot. I can't imagine a world where JJ Weatherholt gets passed up by the Royals. I mean, it's possible. I can imagine it because I'm a Royals fan. But if I were like, hey, I live in a realistic world full of rational people, I can't imagine a world where that happens. Like, that's crazy.
If it's Caglianone or Bryce Rayner, it's
not going to be Caglianone. He is so not a Royals player. Like, he is just not their type of thing. My God, it's Caglianone. Oh no! Wait, hold on.
JK there?
We'll see.
JK?
I'm hearing Caglianone from multiple people.
Oh,
I'm seeing it on there. Yeah. I'm seeing it. Yeah. Yeah.
It's a thing, man. He's really good at baseball. What if they let him pitch? They're never gonna let him pitch.
They should.
I love it.
It's Joe Doyle's reporting it now, so we can pretty much put it in the book. It is.
I would love it.
They're taking the Royals will take Jack Caglianone with their 6th overall pick in this year's draft. He is a big, tall, 6'5", left-handed first baseman / relief pitcher. And so we'll see what the Royals do with that two-way player profile. A ton of power, 70 grade power, maybe.
Definitely 70 grade power.
A guy who up until this year has had a ton of chase, a ton of swing and miss, strikeout issues. And this year turned that around quite a bit, but people are still wondering, hey, have they done enough to turn around the swing and miss issues, the chase issues? Alex, you've seen this pick come in. What are your thoughts? If you want to wait a little bit, you can pass it to Mike.
Look, I get it. Like if you want the guy, the star of the class potentially, like I get it. But here's the way that like I look at it is this dude walked 58 times this year, struck out only 26, hit 35 home runs, hit 68 home runs over the last 2 years. What do you think that other teams just didn't? Right? Like at some point, the reason you have models is so that you don't overvalue your own scouting. Now, they did this last year with Blake Mitchell, and Blake Mitchell looks outstanding. I love what I've seen from Blake Mitchell. Blake Mitchell will probably always strike out a lot. I've kind of resorted to that, but I don't think it's going to be so much that he can't be an all-star. And so Cags has some of that, and if he's Matt Olson, if he's Adam Dunn, like that's a really good first baseman.
Adam Dunn, I had not thought of him as a comp, but that's a really good one. Yeah.
I think that's what you're going to end up with. And the Royals, by the way, maybe we should have seen this coming. Like if you look at the profile of hitter they have in the big leagues, they just refuse to teach guys to be patient. So maybe they're just like, hey, let's take the biggest, strongest guy we can find and just lean into it.
Well, this is actually an interesting comment, right? So who do you think I was looking up these numbers the other day. There's a team that has a worse walk rate and a worse strikeout rate than the Royals and is a better team offensively. It's the Baltimore Orioles. Do you know why they're a better team offensively? Because they hit for a ton of power. Yeah. They are leading the league in slugging percentage. The Royals seem to be leaning into an offensive profile that's like, we're not going to worry too much about on-base ability. We're going to worry a lot about hitting for power, right? Mm-hmm. And so, if you look at their lineup right now, you would say, okay, who are those guys? Those guys are Vinny. Those guys are Bobby. Those guys are Salvi. Those guys are Hunter Renfroe, who they signed in the offseason. Those guys are, they're sort of leaning into that like, oh, it's okay if you don't walk a bunch, but you need to hit for doubles and home runs, right? Like
even their center fielder has that a little bit,
a little bit.
Even Kyle Isbell, I mean, he's a small defensive first center fielder, but you never say, well, he never hits the ball hard. Like he can hit the damn ball hard. Like I never really thought about the Royals moving to a different offensive profile like that. I just thought they sucked at developing an approach that could take a walk. And interesting stuff.
So Jack Caglianone, for those of you who don't know, I'll give you a little stat line. He had in 66 games, 316 plate appearances. He hit .419 for a batting average, .544 for an on base, .875 for a slugging, for a .1419 OPS, 35 home runs this last year, walked 58 times and struck out 26 times, as Alex mentioned. A guy with light tower power who you hope has gotten over the swing and miss issues, because we know the Royals aren't terribly successful fixing those swing and miss issues. And here's the thing. We can talk about how the Royals are comfortable with guys being like swing first, overly aggressive hitters. But at the end of the day, you can't strike out 40, 45 times in Major League Baseball. And so if he's that bad, if his swing and miss issues become that much of an issue, things might get worse as an issue. All right. I have lots of questions lined up, but first we need to do an ad, okay? Because I'm going to forget to do ads if I don't jump in there at some point. Let's see here. Royals Weekly is brought to you by Eric Oxer of West USA Realty. Phoenix has all of our favorite things: year-round golf, year-round baseball, and Eric Oxer of West USA Realty. Whether you want to buy your dream retirement home or just stay a while and catch spring training, Eric can help you find the perfect spot fast. We've known him for more than 30 years, and we trust him far more than we even trust each other.
Remember that time I ordered 20 pizzas to your house and all of them were cauliflower crust?
Yeah, that's the worst thing.
Get healthy, bastard.
Eric does long-term rentals for the snowbird crowd and home sales and purchases for those who want to stay a while longer. Are you a baseball player or parent who needs a place in the Phoenix area? Jack Caglianone, you need a place in Phoenix? Eric will find you the perfect spot fast. Want to spend your days shanking golf balls into the great beyond? Eric knows the golf scene like Mike knows how to say, please, Judge, I didn't know you couldn't urinate there. Find Eric online at ericoxer.com if you can figure out how to spell his name, ERICKAUXIER.com. Or just shoot him a text at 480-383-9745. That's 480-383-9745. Even if you're just curious about what he can do for you, he's 100% no pressure, one of the best people we know.
And he always nails his first-round picks.
Speaking of nailing first-round picks, let's do some grading. Alex, what is your grade for our pick here?
I'm going to give it the exact same grade that I gave last year when they drafted Blake Mitchell. I'm going to give it a B+. I think the player they drafted is an incredible talent, an incredible player that they are lucky to have available to them at the spot. I also think there is some inherent risk when you take a player like this. I don't trust the development team to get this one right. This is not the type of player the Royals have been the most successful with in the draft, in player development, going back over the last few years. So I think it is one of those overvaluing your own scouting, overvaluing the numbers, overvaluing the player and not what you do well as an organization. But the player is inarguably talented. This is almost the exact same thing I said last year, right? Drafting a college first baseman is a very much like drafting a high school catcher, right? They're talented, but there's a reason they don't work out very often, and you have to account for that. The Royals are flipping the bird to the model.
To that
and
thinking.
saying, we are going to take the most electric player we can find and deal with the consequences if it doesn't work out. And so they have doubled down on that this year, and I guess we'll find out.
Do you think they're going to let him pitch?
They announced two-way player on here.
Okay, they must be letting him pitch.
I don't know that he's going to get the start.
No.
But I wouldn't think.
Mike, what is your grade? What do you think?
No, my grade, I'll go B-, because of a lot of the things that Alex said. Actually, the Blake Mitchell pick immediately, or the congruency there of the risk and the Royals' willingness to take that risk, was the first thing that popped into my head. And I'm like, the great thing is you'll never see a better highlight reel than his. Like, he hits huge home runs. I mean, the guy is unbelievably powerful, has been for a couple of years, has shown the ability to improve. He's kind of like that on the mound too. I mean, to me, he's a reliever. He throws straight gas, and he can be very, very wild with it and very inconsistent with it. And I don't. I would have taken JJ Weatherholt. It would have been nice to be a little safer in my book.
They're about to have a first baseman who throws 100 miles an hour. Like, think about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that's just what's interesting to me.
Here's my thing with a two-way player being in relief is, when do you throw him? Do you throw him when he's playing first base and now you lose your DH? Do you throw him in days when he is the DH and you enter the DH into the game? Like, I almost don't know that a two-way player works.
That was my thought. I've never heard anybody say this is how you use a guy in a bullpen role and hit. I've never heard of it.
Maybe you do the Ohtani where you start him as an opener and you let him throw 1, 2, 3 innings to begin a game as the pitcher DH, and then you pull him from the game and continue to let him hit. I just don't know how this works.
They'll be able to, if they wanted to do that, they can kind of play with it in minor league baseball, but still,
I'm not 100% clear on what the rules are if you want the pitcher to hit. And so there's obviously an opportunity to, like, if he's playing first base, he comes in and pitches, he hits as the pitcher. So I guess that's in the DH spot. So you'd have to lose your DH. You're right. Yeah. You'd have to lose your DH.
So that's why they made the rule for Ohtani. So the pitcher starts the game.
If he's your closer, if you're only bringing him in the 9th, right, and you do that, you just sub him out after that inning for a different DH. I mean, it's going to cost you a bench player every time you use him, or every time it goes into extras, I guess. But
they must have a plan for him of some sort, because they're going to have to implement it the second he gets to the professional baseball. So, he's going to be working it out at, Columbia or, Quad Cities, or
if they
Northwest
send him
Arkansas
to Columbia, I'm going to blow a gasket.
It makes no sense to me. It makes no sense to me.
Get him up. Up.
It makes no sense to me to send him there. But you never know. They do like to send him through the entire gauntlet of
Gavin
things.
Cross.
So,
Yeah, he went.
we will see. Mike, you gave it a B minus. I'm going to go ahead and give it an A minus. No, I'm sorry, a B plus. I'm going to give it a B plus. It would have been an A minus had they taken it would have been it would have been an A plus had they taken JJ Weatherholt. The problem with this is if coming into the draft, if you had said, oh, Caglianone's going to be available at 6 and they're going to take him, I'd have been like, cool, that's a good pick. It's a high upside pick, and I'm looking for big upside guys at 6, right? But Weatherholt was available in this scenario. And I would much prefer Weatherholt, who is both a high upside and a much higher floor than Caglianone, right? And so I would prefer him as a pick, but that doesn't mean I don't think that Caglianone was a good pick, right? It's just there was one better pick out there at that point. And so, we'll see those two will kind of get compared to each other in the same way that, Brady Singer and Nolan Gorman are compared to each other, in the same way that, some others are compared to each other who the Royals sort of let pass. We've been comparing Matt Shaw and Kyle Teal to, Blake Mitchell. And so we'll see on that. Any other parting thoughts? We're gonna take a break here in a second and then come back for pick 41. Do you guys have parting thoughts about player comps for Jack Caglianone, or what you think his ceiling or floor might be?
Gosh, player comp. I don't know about approach, but power wise, Jim Thome. I mean, he's got that kind of left-handed power. But I don't know if he's got I don't know if his approach is as good as what Thome's was, but, and Caglianone's probably a better athlete than Jim Thome was, I think anyway. There's been, discussion of, could Caglianone play right field? I don't know, because I haven't seen him run that much, but, he's got the arm to play right field. He seems like he's not a fat slob first baseman. He's a built dude, and it looks like he can move a little bit. So he probably plays you plus defense at first if he stays at first for sure, which I know that's not a lot, but it's something. So I don't hate it.
I think my fear is that he's like Teoscar Hernandez, which is a fine hitter, but it's not what you're really looking for consistently. I guess Teoscar Hernandez is maybe better than I give him credit, but
People are asking
Teoscar Hernandez.
We got an interesting question. Why were people not taking Weatherholt? Was their question. And I think my only answer to that is hamstrings. That's the reason that they weren't taking him. They're afraid of the hamstring injuries. They're afraid it's going to be a recurring problem. They're afraid it might cause other problems, feet problems, and things like that moving forward. Back problems. That's one of the things some of those hamstring issues can do. And he doesn't have a premium position. He's got a high ceiling, but it's not so high you're willing to overlook those. And so, that's why he's fallen a little bit. He did go to the Cardinals at 7, and so he's now off the board. But I wanted to let that question go.
I think Teoscar Hernandez might be a good one to look at. He's only got one season with home runs in the 30s, but generally speaking, 7% walk, 30% strikeout, 225 ISO, 120 weighted runs created plus in his career. I think that's probably ish.
And that's I like that comp a
lot.
lot.
might have better raw power than him even. He's a
he
great
does.
power hitter.
Yeah.
But
and here's the thing. I will say this. I was listening to Baseball America's draft podcast earlier today, and one of the things they mentioned about Caglianone is he does not miss inside the strike zone. He has a really good zone contact rate. And so he has the hit tool to have plate coverage and to cover the zone top to bottom. The problem is he chases too many balls outside the strike zone.
Who does that sound like?
every Royals hitter ever.
No.
Salvador Perez.
Sounds like Salvador Perez. Yeah.
Michael Massey a little bit. I mean,
it sounds like left-handed Salvador Perez. It sounds like, well, he'll have much better power than Michael Massey. And
so, for sure.
So the formula you hope for a Jack Caglianone is that he becomes, God, I hope he walks more than Salvador Perez does. Maybe like Salvador Perez walking a little bit more with that kind of power. And I think he'd be pretty, you'd love that for a career for him. Any parting thoughts before we sign off? We'll be back at around pick 38 to preview pick 41.
I like some college arms there. That's my.
Oh yeah, let's talk.
I like some college arms at 41. Hey, buddy.
Say hi.
How you doing?
There's lots of people watching right now. You better be.
That's right.
Say
The
hi, everybody.
podcast just got a little more handsome there. What's up, feller?
This is why Royals Farm Report's not around anymore.
Don't put that on him. Don't put that on him.
Way more fun than writing blog posts and
Way more
doing that
fun
other
than writing
crap.
blogs and recording every week and looking at you guys more than I have to.
Yeah.
Oh, come on now. I'm handsome too. Yes, a lot of interesting. We will preview that when we come back at pick 38.
Oh, hey,
Thank you
see
so
who
much.
the Angels just took?
Christian Moore.
How about that?
Yeah.
All right.
Apparently some sort of eye procedure like saved his career or something, or he got to change his vision or something.
We'll see you guys a little bit later. Thanks, guys.
All right.
Later.
Thanks. See you, Alex.
Yeah. Bye.
All right. Mike, we're back. We have had a little bit of time to sit and digest news about Jack Caglianone and think more about what we think about him as a pick. What are your thoughts on the notion that apparently he is going to be allowed to both pitch and hit as a player? It was initially reported by Jeff Passan that the Royals were just going to have him hit, but Annie Rogers has come out with a statement saying that the Royals are going to let him continue to hit and pitch just as he did at Florida. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm pretty surprised that they're going to let him pitch as well, because not necessarily because he can't do it and he isn't a promising arm. I think promising relief arm. I saw somebody put out there, maybe they let him DH and start. If he's a starter, he's a long way away on the mound. And not that far away on at the plate. So that doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. If he's a relief pitcher, I think that still slows him down, honestly. So that's why I was really surprised that they're going to let him pitch at all. I assumed they would say, if the hitting thing doesn't work out, pitching is a second option. I never thought that they would let him do both, although it's extremely exciting and interesting. It's a new way of thinking, and I like that at least.
It is. And the weird thing is there really aren't any models for it. You can't say you can't even say Shohei Ohtani because he's a starter. Like the models for relieving, we were having trouble in the previous segment, Yumi and Alex Duvall talking about what he could be as a two-way player. And we were having a difficult time just understanding how it will work mechanically, like logistically. How do you have him come into a game as a pitcher, like as a relief pitcher? I think there's a lot of complications around that. And so they'll have to figure out how they're going to do that for him. It'll have something to do with the bench and utilizing, maybe losing the DH in particular ways. It's going to be an interesting sort of combination of things for him. As a pitcher, we didn't talk much about him, but he's left-handed with a fastball that goes up to 100 miles an hour. He's got a changeup that's supposed to be plus. Good stuff. Has trouble throwing strikes. He's relatively early off of Tommy John. I don't know that he had pitched at all for Florida up until this season because he was recovering from some form of surgery that ended up keeping him from pitching, I think. And so obviously an electric arm, obviously a ton of velocity out there. The question is, like Mike said, will the pitching develop fast enough to give him a realistic chance to even pitch in the upper minors? Like, I have a lot of skepticism that this experiment will last beyond this first initial season, like his debut season, because if he progresses enough as a hitter, it just makes no sense to send him out there and get crushed by AA pitching or get crushed by AA hitters while he's out there crushing AA pitching. It's like, they don't have time to wait for him to become a better pitcher. They're going to have to move him up the ladder to hit if he's hitting.
Because he'll be 28 when, by the time he's ready to go as a pitcher. That's why I just don't think the pitching is far enough advanced to get anywhere near where the hitting is, and that's going to make him drop the pitching, I think, at some point too. But after I reminisce on it a little bit more, I think he's one of those guys that, because it's mostly a chase rate issue, I don't think there's a lot of people questioning his power. Okay, we see his ability to hit inside the zone. I think as time goes on and he sees more major league pitching, I think you'll naturally see the chase rate come down a little bit. Now, that doesn't mean, though, that he doesn't get to Major League Baseball and he's hitting 235. You might have to live with 235 because you might get 40 plus home runs off of that 235. So that's something that we may see down the road.
FYI, 235 is a league average batting average in 2024, and so that would be league average.
And 40 home runs, that's not average.
That's not league average. And so, yeah, I'd be tickled 3 shades of pink if he could hit 235 at the major league level. We had somebody ask in the chat here on YouTube. Make sure you're leaving us lots of questions. Oh, people are already jumping in. All right. Tommy White at 41. Mike, I know you're a big fan of Tommy White or someone.
Tommy Tanks, baby.
Tommy Tanks. Are you thinking him at 41? There's still a lot of talent available. This draft has gone a little wonky. There are a bunch of guys left,
and that's the thing. I told people there's going to be good people there.
Yeah,
and it's because of the dearth of high school athletes that there are. Like I said, between 25 and 50. That means you see some of these guys from college that maybe some people think pretty highly of, but have some concerns or a big flaw here or there, or like Tommy has produced, but there's some questions on his ability to not strike out. And there's some questions on his, fielding ability and projectable fielding ability. But I'll tell you what, the guy loves to play. He's been productive for longer than just about anybody we've ever seen, right? He doesn't run well. He's not a great athlete. He doesn't field well, but maybe he sticks at third, and as long as he can get the swing and miss stuff out of control or under control, then you feel like you've got a guy who can be a productive major league hitter.
Yeah, White is the third best prospect remaining according to MLB Pipeline's rankings. We're going to get Alex Duvall back in here. He's got an odd orientation on his thing again.
What if I do it upside down? Am I upside down to you?
You are literally upside down. Just flip it exactly the opposite of where you are right now.
Well, I would, but I've got my phone plugged in. Oh, well. If it dies, it dies.
And so we've just been joined by Alex Duvall. Alex, we're a few picks away from the Royals pick at 41. Who are the players you like that are still on the board?
Well, I would tell you, but my computer's down.
Okay. How about Tommy White? Do you like him?
Not really.
Okay. Tell Mike why you don't like him, because Mike loves him.
I don't know that there's a natural defensive fit. And so, look, I don't dislike him. I think the bat plays. I just don't know that the bat can carry somebody with no defensive home long term. Reminds me a little bit like, this is a dumb, again, I'm not comparing the two, but like with Tucker Bradley, take my glasses off to the reflection. With Tucker Bradley, former Royals prospect, it was always a decent bat. It's just such a bad defensive profile that you don't necessarily know that there's a spot for him on the field to not, hit for a 130 weighted runs created plus or whatever. So,
that makes sense. A guy who's got to be an all offensive profile in some ways, who's got to produce a ton in that regard. A lot of talent still out there in other ways. We see Billy Amick, my guy, Dakota Jordan, who I'm really hoping they take with this pick 41. Big athletic outfielder from Mississippi State. Jonathan Santucci still left on the board. And then further down, Luke Holman, Joey. I know a lot of people are high on Joey Oakey, prep pitcher.
I think Alex is, aren't you, Alex?
Mm-hmm.
Big Joey Oakey guy. What do you like about that? What do you like about him?
It's funky but under control. And so a lot of guys who throw real funky like he does at a young age have a hard time transitioning into professional baseball because they don't know how to control it. I think Hero Wyatt is a good example of that. Last year, people were excited about the Hero Wyatt pick, and I frankly was not. But the thing with Joey Oakey is it's so under control, it's a smooth operation, and creates a ton of deception. And so I think there's a spot there for Joey Oakey to find what was that cat's name that pitched for Cleveland for a long time that threw real funky? Sinker baller.
No, not Carrasco.
No. Hang on, I'll find it.
Mark, did you say Dakota Johnson's your guy?
Dakota Jordan, yeah.
Dakota Jordan, sorry, yeah. He's an interesting one. He's a draft-eligible sophomore, if I'm not mistaken.
He is. Another funky delivery pitcher, Ryan Johnson, is another guy I'm interested in from Dallas Baptist. Kind of comes from a real low three-quarter thing. Tremendous numbers this year. If he was pitching in the SEC, he'd be going in the top 10 probably. But a guy who people are going to be a little concerned about the delivery, and at the competition level, but he dominated who he was facing, and so I'm very interested. I forget the number. It was something like 115 strikeouts to like 14 walks, or 150 strikeouts to 14 walks this last year at Dallas Baptist. Insane numbers out of Ryan Johnson this year, and so I'm interested to see where he goes, but he probably won't go here to 41, but an
Do you
interesting
remember
prospect.
Justin Masterson?
Yes.
That's what I was thinking.
Oh yeah,
Oh, okay.
Masterson. That's a
He was really good for a while as a sinker baller for Cleveland. I believe injuries ended up maybe ending his career a little earlier than it should have, but he was a real workhorse for them.
Okay, I'm looking at Fangraph's board. I've been with putting kids down and with child for the last couple hours, but looking at the names on the board that Fangraphs has, kind of in order here. Really like Joey Oakey. I saw earlier. Oh, Mike Sirota has to be number one on our board right now, right?
Not
See,
mine.
everybody loves him.
I mean,
I'm
I
not
like
a
Mike
huge
Sirota.
Sirota guy.
But if I get a choice, I'll take Dakota Jordan over him.
okay. I love
Just
Mike.
because the upside. There's so much upside.
I think enough fluke there to not warrant overreacting to a bad year, but I really like him.
Yeah.
I think he's. I see him as semi-projectable as well. Honestly,
Jalen Flores is another guy I earmarked for the Royals here. Draft eligible sophomore out of Texas, big power, big swing. Also a guy who I think profiles as a third baseman long term, but I mean reminds me a bit of like Carlos Correa. Not as good, obviously, but like just a big physical presence on the infield and could hit for a lot of power. Really like Jalen Flores out of Texas.
I think that speaks to what this 41 pick or pick 41 is going to mean for the Royals, which is you can find guys with those kind of raw tools out there still, but you need to be looking for guys who you think your system can improve, right? Or your player development system is really going to be a good fit for. And so if the Royals think, hey, we can help this guy shorten his swing, hey, we can help this guy become a better outfielder, like with the case of Dakota Jordan, then that's something that they really are paying a lot of attention to, I imagine, here is like, not just does this guy have potential, but will he be a good fit for our player development system? That's what they should be thinking of at this point.
What do you guys think of Michael Massey, the pitcher from Wake Forest?
I was looking at him the other day. I think he's very interesting. There's a couple other guys that are college guys like that I like a little bit better than him in Prager out of Texas A&M and Cunningham out of Vandy. But I thought Massey was very interesting. I did. Yeah, I liked him a lot.
I think if I had to pick one guy that's my favorite available. Oh, there goes Tommy White.
Oh, did he go?
Tommy Tanks was taken to the A's at pick 40. Yep.
I think if I had to make the pick here,
What
I'm
a
going
classic A's pick.
Tyler Bell's a prep shortstop out of Illinois, committed to Kentucky. Unbelievable athlete, great looking swing. I think he's a guy you kind of dream on. The issue people are going to have, he's already 19 years old. So like I kind of understand that there's some model issues with a guy that's that old already, whatever, but really, really, really big fan of Tyler Bell. Kind of curious to see where he ends up, if he gets drafted at all, if he signs.
Yeah, and I think there are going to be quite a few of these prep guys who are left who are just pretty much decided they're going to college at this point. And we have to ask the question, if the Royals go after one of those prep guys, can they afford one of those prep guys? Because they're probably going to have to pay Jack Caglione slot value, I would imagine, right? Like, and so, they're not going to have a ton of savings, especially now that they've traded that pick 39 away. That bonus pool money is lower, and they'd have to do some.
The pick is in. Have you seen it?
What is it?
Right-handed pitcher David Shield, prep kid.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I looked at him a little
Mike,
bit.
You did.
Yeah.
Prep pitcher, so they must think that they can get him. They must think that they can sign him.
Great athlete, lefty.
He's a lefty.
Yeah. Lefty, young guy, great athlete, kind of a good overall kind of a profile for him. Still projectable. He's not the tallest kid in the world, but when you look at him on the mound, you're like, okay, I can see that this kid played other sports. He was a very good quarterback in high school as well. Yeah, I like it a lot. I do like Shields a lot. He didn't play the best competition in Pennsylvania, but good fastball, works it all over the plate pretty well. Good command for a kid that age, which if we've kind of learned anything, it's that you can improve your stuff, right? And so I think that drafting a guy like this is a good athlete with already pretty good command, improve that secondary stuff a little bit, and see how the fastball plays. And you got a guy that's that I really do like.
Alex, you got thoughts on David Shields?
Another lefty that throws 87, 88.
That's yeah.
That
Well,
little-
here's the thing though. What have we talked about? We've talked about, hey, one of the things that you can really add to a pitcher now is velocity. It's not like,
Some people
you
can.
know, some people can. And the Royals have had some success doing that in the past. David, you'll remember Daniel Lynch added velocity to his fastball in the minors. That's sort of taken a little step back at this point, but it's still higher than it was when he was pitching at
Bubich did a little bit.
UVA. Bubich has done it. And Zerpa has increased his velocity drastically this year. Now, of course, some of that is moving into the bullpen, but there are guys who have done it in this Royal system. Watching some video of him, I've seen the thing I like about him, obviously, is the athleticism. I think he's got a pretty whippy arm, a pretty loose arm, and I like that a lot in a prospect. He's left-handed, which is great. You hope
he's young. I mean,
He's
he
young.
reclassified to be in this year, so he's 17 years old. He could grow.
Okay, so here's the interesting thing about this reclassification trend. We know that the Royals are very interested in getting like late risers. They've been very interested in things like getting in early on draft eligible sophomores. This might be the new version of that. Getting in early on the reclassified guys who, you know, if they had one more year in high school or one more, they would be adding the velocity needed to be a much higher consideration, right? Now you got to really trust your scouts on this because doing that kind of projection is really difficult. But it is interesting that they're at least trying something like that. I've heard of more guys reclassifying this year than I have ever heard of. And I don't know if that's some sort of trend that's going to continue, but it is interesting to see those guys like Cam Caminiti was taken really early tonight. He's another one. I'm wondering if this lefty, I mean, he's left-handed, so what do you want from him? Throw 5 or 6 miles per hour harder? He's got 4 or 5 years to get there.
I'm struggling to think of who he reminds me of. There's somebody that this looks like.
People in the Royals organization or Royals fans are going to go, well, he's Mazzucato. He's got the same issue as Mazzucato. Now, different off-speed pitches, different athletes, different kind of player, but we're still waiting on Mazzucato's velocity to come up. And he was a high school kid that pitched in I don't know if you call Pennsylvania the Northeast, but it isn't in the South. And, so, there's going to be comparisons.
He looks way more athletic, way more natural.
Way more. He's already built bigger than Mazzucato is. I mean, he looks like he played quarterback.
For the life of me, I cannot think of who he reminds me of throwing the baseball.
Yeah, I'm hearing that too because that leg kick is giving me something. I wanted to say Danny Duffy to start, but that's not it. It's that leg kick is giving me vibes of somebody, but I can't think of who it is.
I kind of wonder too if maybe this isn't like you wonder with these prep kids, right? Like, are they gonna sign like for slot value? Like, what's their commitment? Are they wanting a ton of money?
Well, he's going to Miami.
Range.
He's committed to Miami.
Here's my thing, though. You can't take him at this spot unless you know he's going to sign. Like, you really can't throw that pick away. So he's going to sign.
Right.
Maybe he was just happy to take the
You're gonna have
the 2.1 million. Maybe he's happy to take that. Some guys just don't want to go to college, really. They want to just go play baseball, right? And that's fine. They must have felt him out, and he's like, I'm willing to take 2.1 million or whatever that slot value is, because they're not going to be able to drastically overpay him unless they senior sign the next 2 or 3 picks, right? Like, because there just won't be that much money left. And so there's going to be none. I'm convinced Caglianone is not going not going to take under slot. Why would he? You know, like,
Right.
and so they're not going to save money there. And so my guess is this is just 2 virtually full slot picks. And, you know, they must believe that much in Shields. He must be okay with taking that. And we'll see from there.
Really quick, what's the name of the cat they hired to run the draft?
Brian Bridges.
Brian Bridges, that's it.
Yeah.
Was kind of famously big. Oh, Ranger Suarez. That's who this kid looks like. Phillies lefty. Just a real smooth. Yeah, that's who this kid reminds me of a little bit. But Brian Bridges drafted a lot of prep arms in his time with Atlanta. Yes, Atlanta. So kind of to the mold. Now the difference is it's one thing to scout them, is a whole other thing to be able to develop them and get them where they need to be long term. So anyway.
So I guess we're going to see if the Royals do have the ability to add some velocity to a young player and make him, you know, somebody who can pitch in Major League Baseball. They got the tall order with Mazzucato to do that. Maybe him. We'll see.
I'll also point out that
Hero Wyatt
trend
still
here,
too, by the way.
right, yeah. Also point out the trend of the Royals taking guys from, they love the prep pitcher from a non-traditional state, right? They love cold weather, non-traditional baseball states guys. They're late risers in the process. They must love their scouts in, you know, New England,
in Michigan and Connecticut.
and, you know, in New England especially, because think about this.
Yeah.
They got Mazzucato from Connecticut. They got this guy from Pennsylvania. They got someone else from up there in New England.
Hero
Where's
Wyatt's from
Wyatt?
up there.
He's up there too, yeah.
Yeah.
Those 3 guys, all from New England, right? They got Walters from Illinois, right here in the Midwest, but that's another non-traditional cold weather state. They love these guys who they get scouts to see late in the spring. And I mean, just think about the projection they must be doing on this kid Shields. He is so young. Like, they must be thinking like, okay, we want to get in super early on Shields because they must love that smooth motion. They must love his athleticism. They must be saying, we can get this kid to throw at least 93, 94, and we think he's going to have legitimate stuff. And so we're going to get on him really early, because it would not have surprised me if a bunch of teams were like, we're not going to take this gamble so early on this kid, and he would have just gone to college. Like, that would not have surprised me at all. But apparently they want to be on the ground floor of David Shields. So,
well, I mean, compare him too to some of the college arms that are ranked in that kind of area. What's the Holman kid from LSU, the Santucci from Duke, you know, some of these guys, they throw really hard, but there's questions with them as well. You feel like you're getting this guy 4 years younger than that. You know, that's pretty big. That's a lot of time to develop those things, you know? So yeah, I liked some of those guys. I like Santucci. I would have gone with him maybe, but you're talking about the difference in a Santucci's got a couple of years to try and fix some of the issues that he has with commanding the baseball and things like that, and Shields has 4 years, and all he's got to do is increase that velocity. 5 years, 6 years, and he's got to increase velocity, and he's got to refine secondary pitches. You know, but
how long until Rule 5 kicks in, Alex? How many years you got for Rule 5 if you're a high school draftee? 5. Well, is it 5 for a prep? It's usually done by your age when you're drafted, and so it must be 5 if you're 18, right? Like, yeah, it must be.
I'm pretty sure it's just 5.
Okay. And so he's got 5 years of minor league baseball to do all this developing. It will be slow for him. I guarantee it. They're not going to rush a 17-year-old. But it is interesting to note that he gets at least above average grades for his control and command. And, you know, we've talked about, hey, what's the model of the Royals pitcher? What are they looking for? Should they be targeting guys with that level of control and command and just working on their stuff? Alex, do you have a philosophical thought on what would be best for their player development to target?
This is it. But the problem is, like, at what point as an organization do you pick a profile, right? Like, the problem with the Royals drafting prep arms in the past has been there's no rhyme or reason to any of them. It's almost like they didn't have a grocery list, walked through Walmart, and started picking ingredients to make cookies and you get home and you've got jelly beans and chips and cinnamon.
Salsa.
It's like, okay,
Pack of rubbers. Like, what the heck happened here?
like I could see all these things going in cookies, but the same cookie, like, and it's like just like find something that works. And so now Brian Bridges in his first year, we'll see what other kinds of pitchers he's likely to pick and scout. But I really like that David Shields is a little more fine tuned than the rawer arms they've taken in the past. A Blake Walters, a Hero Wyatt, a Frank Mazzacott
Yeah.
need a ton of development. And David
Yeah.
Shields, watching him throw, it's like, all right, add some velo and experience, So, I mean,
Yeah, that's the crazy thing. Like, you put him next to Hero Wyatt, who I think, did they take him in the 3rd round last year? That they're very, very different pitchers. Like, Shields is much more polished than what Wyatt ever was, and a better athlete, just generally speaking. So, good to see that. It's an interesting approach. Zach Greinke, when they took him in the top 15, however many years ago, he was that kind of guy coming out of high school. He wasn't a power arm. He was a kind of control, and developed some of that velocity even a little bit after he joined the Royals major league team. And so you can be that kind of guy if you're a good enough athlete like Zach Greinke is.
Yeah, and it makes me think about like the type of pitcher we consider a Cleveland Guardians pitcher, like the type of pitcher that often comes out of their system looks a lot like that. A guy who, maybe was a little more polished or had a little bit better command coming in, and they sort of made his stuff better. They made him better throwing breaking pitches and things like that. And so we'll see if that is sort of the type of factory they're trying to create here. It does make me think, Alex, you mentioned the notion. I think you hit it right on the head with they were trying to make cookies and they just started randomly grabbing stuff off the shelf. Previously, it felt like it felt like the Royals had the mindset that was like, we need to take every type of pitcher there is and then hope one of them works out. Because they didn't know, like, this is the one that works out well for us, or this is the one that our development can do a lot with. And I think it's a much better approach to sort of have a good pitching player development, understand what it does well, and then play off your strengths there, because that just ultimately ends up working out a lot better. I do have to ask. Oh, go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, I want to add. I'm reading his profile on. I was just trying to find some more info about his season that he had, because I was watching a video and the radar gun said 94. I'm like, okay, hang on. It looks like at the beginning of the year he had mono and was slow out of the gate. Was 87, 88 early, but into the back half of his senior year was consistently 92, 93, hit 94. So it's not like there's still a ton of untapped velo to add. It's clearly something that he possesses, and that's something that's good moving forward.
And late riser. The Royals love him, man. The hero, and I hate making the Hero Wyatt comp, but that was the exact same story with him. That's exactly what they were talking about last year was, hey, the Royals caught this guy. He improved his velo 2 miles per hour at the end of the year. He looks like a guy. Hopefully, Shields can come in and work on that even more. And so young.
Man, the thing I always wonder about when I hear about prep players and them coming into professional baseball is, what's it got to be like to be 17, 18? There's no way they're going to let him into full season ball. But let's say next year when he's 18 and they're like, hey, you're ready to go to low A, maybe.
Columbia.
You're going to walk into a clubhouse with 23-year-old men, 24, some of them. Like, it's got to be weird. The difference between an 18-year-old and a 23-year-old is the difference between the earth and the moon. I mean, it is huge. And so what a interesting trip that's going to be for David Shields. I do want to get a grade from both of you, both from this pick and for the first day altogether. So Mike, start us off. What is your grade for this pick? And then give me your grade for day one overall.
I'm going to go with, I'll go with a B even. Upon reflection of the Caglianone pick, I probably upgrade that a little bit. I don't see how he's going to continue to pitch. I don't see that. It's such a tough line to toe when his bat is so much further ahead than the pitching. But I like Shields. I liked Shields before today. Give me a kid who can already throw in the low 90s, who's a phenomenal athlete on the mound, who's a year younger than everybody else he's being drafted with. And, I'll take that all day long. So add some talent to this lower part of the minors on the pitching side. I would keep going pitching if I were the Royals, because I think the depth of it's just not fantastic in their system. But overall, B for me.
What'd you grade the Shields pick specifically?
Specifically, the Shields pick, I'd call it. I'll go B plus because I really like him. I do. I love the athleticism. I talked about him as a possible guy. I think I don't remember if that was a midweek episode or a weekly episode, but I do like Shields.
Alex, what do you got?
I'm going to give it a C plus. I think there are guys that I would have rather had still on the board, specifically the Bell kid.
Well, the kid from Iowa too, Oki. Was he still on there?
I probably would have gone there because there's a little more to, in terms of like unique traits, things that you cannot teach. I think Joey Oki had more of them. Size, and so looking at the pick, I try to grade the pick, like with the Caglianone pick. That's gonna be impossible for me. With the Jack pick,
Cags.
Let's call him Jack, like we're old buddies. Hey,
Jackie C.
Pick, like I don't credit the Royals for him falling into their lap. Like it's not a slam dunk that he's gonna be awesome either in my mind, and so I'm going to stick with a B plus for Cags. And then with this pick, I'm going to go C plus because I just don't think there's a lot of creativity to it. You're not trying to develop something specific. I also want to give the caveat. This is our first draft with Bridges. So I want, if this was year 3 and this is something we had seen him do before and do well, and the Royals have developed this kind of player, and then they went out, targeted it, and got him again, I'd be like, okay, that's great. I'll give it an A plus because we've seen it work in the past. The Royals right now, their drafts have been so sporadic that if you're not drafting a player that I think is a quality or has some traits that other people may be missing, and that's why he fell, I can't just give you a good grade because the guy's ranked 41st and you took him 41st. So that was long-winded way of saying I'm going to give it a C plus with the caveat that in the future this same pick could be an A plus very easily.
What do you give
they're
him
not the
overall
Chiefs.
for day
They're not
one?
the Chiefs drafting defensive backs. When the Chiefs draft defensive backs, they can take them in the 5th, the 6th. They cash on those guys. You don't give the Royals that same benefit of the doubt.
That's a really good,
especially when it comes to arms. I think
that's a really good way to put it. Overall on the night, I'll give it a B. I'll curve to the first pick because I do think they diversified their portfolio a little bit, and I'm always for that. So I'll give it a B, but I do think that it'll take some time to really tell. And I know it's kind of a cop out, but
no, that's actually accurate, and it's interesting to think how many different people have they had leading their drafts over the last 3 or 4 years? At least 3, right? Like because Ontivero only took over for a year or 2 in there, and then Bridges, and then whoever was before Ontivero.
But JJ may have ran a draft. No, that was a long time ago. So probably just Goldberg.
Who's the guy? Goldberg. There it is. And so, yeah, they've had essentially 3 different people in the last 3 or 4 years running these drafts. And obviously you're going to get different types of approaches. I mean, some of the stuff remains the same. We've seen some patterns here, but they have different perspectives, different values, different identities in terms of what they want. And so you're going to have some different outcomes. In terms of the grade for this pick, I'm going to go with a B for the Shields pick. Because I do find it very intriguing how clean his motion is. I love a guy with a whippy arm, and I think there's a lot of projectability in somebody that young. Adding velocity, adding stuff could be something that we see from him. So I'm very intrigued by that. I would have preferred some others. I would have preferred Dakota Jordan out of that pick. He was my guy, and I thought, for a college player, he's very young, like 20 years old. And they could have just given him some work on his defense and help with the swing and miss, and he could become a very, very, very good everyday center fielder. But I was happy with the pick. and I think I gave the first one a A-. So I think we'll just average the two and go overall. For me, this is a B+ draft so far. A lot of this draft's value will hang on what takes place tomorrow and the next day. And so we'll see on that. We'll be back to discuss. I've already decided, Mike, our midweek episode this week is going to be entirely draft coverage.
Ooh,
so
fun.
If you're interested in listening to that, go ahead and become a paid subscriber to our Substack. You'll get an episode every Wednesday. This is called promoting, Alex. I know you remember these days. Go to royalsweekly.substack.com and get a little taste of the midweek episode we run every week. Any parting thoughts, Alex or Mike, on day one for the MLB draft?
One quick one here. I want you to think about when Jack Caglianone and Blake Mitchell are making their debut in 2026 or 2027. And Bobby Witt Jr. is also in the lineup, and so is Vinny Pasquantino. That's a lot of pop for a lineup to have. If you can get all of them there and all of them hitting at the same time, that's going to be pretty fun. Something to dream on right there.
37-year-old Salvador Perez staggers out to the plate, using the bat as a cane,
shaking his fist,
drop bombs.
Trying desperately to get to 350 for the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, there we go.
Alex, any parting thoughts?
Yeah, I will say, so when they traded the 39th pick, I was like, okay, like, I don't love that, but all right. And then now that I'm watching the draft unfold, there has not been a single pick outside of Slade Caldwell at 29, but they didn't pick 29, they're picking 39. And so I'm looking at picks 31, 32, because if they're prep guys, you can move them down, but they're all college kids. You get into 34, 35. I mean, most of these kids are either college kids or high school kids that I'm not super excited about. And in the second round, there was not a single player taken where I'm like, oh man, the Royals really missed out on that, except for Ryan Sloan. And the Royals could have drafted him. They let him go. I don't know what that's about. I mean, when a guy ranked that high falls, you kind of just assume he's going to end up in college, but all of a sudden he's being drafted by Seattle late. So anyway, my point is, good year to trade the 39th pick for a reliever, because I'm looking at the board and I'm not excited really about a lot of these guys. So obviously there's a lot of talent. There'll be big leaguers. I'm just, it was a good year to trade that pick, in my opinion.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where the wild thing to me is, yeah, they're going to get the value of having Harvey on their team. And if they really want to, they could just flip him at the next deadline and get some picks back. Or not a pick back, but prospects back. Like, it's not really an unheard of thing here. The value of, we were talking earlier about like the studies that are run about what kind of value you typically get out of each of these draft slots. I looked one of those up earlier today. It's like 1.5 to 2.5 career WAR from the 39th pick. And it's like, on average, I mean, that's nothing. That's what, I don't know. That's
what Freddie Freeman's going to give us this year.
Yeah. Well, more than he'll give us more than that.
He's getting more than that. Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's a slightly below average player in a season, and that's over a career. So thank you so much for joining us, Alex. We really, really appreciate it. We know you got so much on your plate. You're yawning already. You need to sleep. You're taking care of kids. You're saving the youths. You're teaching people baseball. It's incredible. So thank you for joining us. We want to thank Josh Keiser from One Royal Ray for joining us during the first segment. That was a ton of fun. Sorry you missed him, Alex. It was like two ships crossing in the night. Sorry about that. We do have to mention to you that we are very happy to be brought to you by Bet Online. So we enjoy that. Thank you, Bet Online, for funding us to some degree. Yeah, we will be back next week for another episode of Royals Weekly. Subscribe to the Substack to get our midweek episode. We're talking more draft. We'll see you then. Until then, be good to each other.
And go Royals.
Go Royals.